The Hilltop Families. Lisa was married to a wonderful husband named Maffa. He was a caring and loving man who measured affection not in grand gestures but in the steady accumulation of small, thoughtful acts. On Tuesdays he brought home the wildflowers that grew along the dirt road past the school, because he had noticed years ago that Lisa always paused to look at them on their evening walks. When the first cold front of June rolled in from the coast, he would quietly move her favorite wool throw from the cedar chest to the back of the couch before she even thought to ask. He remembered that she took her tea with a slice of lemon and no sugar, that she preferred the left side of the bed because the morning light came through the eastern window, and that the song that made her cry was not a sad one, but the one that had played when he first told her he loved her. He told her often, sometimes with words, murmured against her hair while she was washing dishes. Sometimes with his hands, fixing the loose shutter that kept her awake at night. Sometimes with silence, sitting beside her on the porch while the sun went down over the valley, his presence itself a kind of reassurance. Lisa was a beautiful woman, but her beauty was not the kind that stopped traffic. It was slower, the kind that revealed itself over time. It lived in the way she carried herself, shoulders back, chin level, as if she had decided long ago that the world would not make her smaller. She had a laugh that started low and then surprised you by how high it could go. Her grace was not studied, it was practical. She could navigate a muddy market in heels, balance a child on one hip and a bag of maize meal on the other, and still pause to compliment an old woman's scarf. She and Maffa lived a comfortable life in the same village where Maffa had grown up, in a house he had built with his own hands during the first year of their marriage. It was made of brick and plaster, painted a warm cream color, with blue trim around the windows that Lisa had chosen. From their front stoop they could see the winding road that led down into the center of the village, past the church with its white steeple, past the shop owned by Mr. Delamini, all the way to the river that marked the village boundary. Maffa and his younger brother, Spiri, were the only children their mother had. They had been raised in a beautiful village surrounded by rolling hills and breathtaking scenery that changed with the seasons. The family home stood on top of a hill, a position that had once been strategic and was now simply beautiful. From its kitchen window you could see the entire village laid out below. As boys, Maffa and Spiri had learned to read the village from that vantage point. They knew when someone was sick because the curtains would stay closed. They knew when there was a wedding because the women would start cooking 3 days before and the sound of singing would drift up the hill at night. Their father had passed away when they were still young. Their mother, Nomvula, was 28 years old and suddenly a widow with 2 boys and a plot of land that needed tending. She did not remarry. She took over the small vegetable garden behind the house and expanded it. She learned to fix the roof when it leaked. She took in sewing to make extra money, staying up late by the light of a paraffin lamp, her fingers working while the boys slept. She taught them that family was not just the people you lived with, but the people you showed up for. As a result, both brothers developed a strong bond with her that had nothing to do with duty and everything to do with love. Even after becoming adults, they continued to spend many evenings at her house. Tuesday was for their mother. The house on the hill smelled like onions frying and wood smoke and the particular soap Nomvula used to wash the floors. Maffa had built his own home about a 10-minute walk from his mother's house. Spiri lived nearby, in a smaller house he rented from the old teacher who had moved to the city. Maffa kept the books for the co-op. Spiri was a mechanic, good with engines and better with people. Family gatherings were a regular part of their lives. Sunday lunch after church, birthdays, the day they planted the winter crops. The table would be extended with planks, children would run between the adults' legs, and the stories would start. Although the brothers loved each other deeply, they were very different in personality. Maffa was calm, responsible, and reserved. He thought before he spoke and often decided not to speak at all. He liked routines. He preferred a peaceful lifestyle and valued stability the way some people valued adventure. To him, a good day was one where nothing unexpected happened. He loved Lisa with a focus that was almost physical. Spiri, on the other hand, was outgoing and adventurous. He walked into a room and it changed temperature. He knew everyone's name and their cousin's name and what the dog was called. He was known throughout the village for his confidence and energetic nature. He was tall, athletic, and naturally charismatic, with a smile that made people want to agree with him. Where Maffa was compact and solid, Spiri was all long limbs and motion. Spiri was married to a woman named Boosie. Before her marriage, Boosie had participated in beauty pageants and worked as a model in the city. She was admired by many people for her elegance and charm. Despite her beauty, she remained humble and kind. She helped Nomvula bottle peaches in February. She taught the girls at the church youth group how to walk in heels, but also how to change a tire. Whenever the families gathered at their mother's house, conversations flowed easily. Maffa and Boosie often found themselves discussing life, dreams, and different viewpoints. Their conversations were thoughtful and engaging, not flirtatious but intense in the way two people can be when they realize the other is actually listening. It was clear that they respected each other's opinions. Nomvula watched them and said nothing. Lisa watched them and said nothing. At the same time, Lisa and Spiri shared an unspoken connection that had no name. They rarely spoke at length. If they were alone in a room together, one of them would find a reason to leave. Yet there was a noticeable tension whenever they were in the same room, a current that everyone felt but no one mentioned. Their eyes would occasionally meet across the dinner table, over the heads of children, through the steam of the pap and stew. When it happened, both would quickly look away. The moment would pass, but the air would be different for a minute afterward, charged like before a storm. While the rest of the family talked about family matters or general news, no one paid much attention to Spiri and Boosie's talks. But something else was happening at the table, unnoticed by everyone else. Lisa and Spiri could barely speak to each other about anything normal, yet their eyes kept finding one another. The gaze they gave each other lingered, too long, too heavy. Lisa was drawn to Spiri, and the shame of it burned inside her. They would stare without either one dropping the look. In those moments, Lisa would imagine things she shouldn't. Spiri's hands on her right there at the table. She would fantasize about Spiri ripping her clothes. Her cheeks would flush, her breath would quicken, and she'd suddenly need to leave. It was always in those moments that she'd lean over to Maffa and whisper, "Can we go home now?" At home, she'd be all over Maffa, kissing him urgently, pulling him close before he'd even set down his keys. Sometimes Maffa would be surprised by the suddenness of it. He was a romantic person who liked to take things slow, to light candles, to whisper sweet things. But Lisa couldn't wait. She needed him fast, hard, as if she was trying to drown out the image of his brother's eyes still burning in her mind. And Maffa, loving her as he did, gave her what she asked for, never knowing that her hunger wasn't entirely for him. A week later, the family gathered again at their mother's house. The air smelled of grilled meat and maize porridge. Children ran in the yard, and the brothers laughed over something Maffa had said about work. Lisa sat beside Maffa, as she always did. Across the table, Spiri sat next to Boosie. Boosie was telling a story about a friend from her modeling days, and everyone was listening. Everyone except Lisa. She found herself watching Spiri's hands as he reached for the water jug. His fingers were strong, veins standing out slightly under his skin. She remembered the fantasy from last week, those same hands tearing at her underwear. Heat rose up her neck. She looked down quickly, pretending to adjust her plate. "Lisa, you're quiet," her mother-in-law said. "Are you feeling well?" "I'm fine, Mama," Lisa said, forcing a smile. "Just tired from work." Maffa squeezed her knee under the table. "You've been working too hard," he murmured. "We should take a walk later, just the two of us." She nodded, but her eyes betrayed her. When she looked up, Spiri was already looking at her. He didn't smile. He didn't look away. His gaze was steady, dark, and knowing, as if he'd seen the flush on her skin and understood exactly what caused it. Lisa's breath caught. She swallowed hard and took a sip of water, but her hand shook slightly. Boosie laughed at something Spiri said, and he turned to her, his expression softening. For a second, Lisa felt a sharp pang, not of jealousy, but of loss for something she'd never had. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. She barely tasted the food. All she could feel was the weight of Spiri's eyes every time she dared to look up, and the guilt that followed right after. When it was time to leave, Lisa stood up too quickly. "Maffa, can we go home now?" she said, her voice a little too eager. Maffa, ever attentive, took her hand. "Of course, my love." As they walked down the hill toward their house, Lisa didn't look back. But she could still feel it, that pull, that unspoken thing hanging in the air between her and Spiri, growing heavier with every Sunday dinner. And Maffa, walking beside her, had no idea how close she was to breaking. While the rest of the family talked about family matters or general news, no one paid much attention to Spiri and Boosie's talks. But something else was happening at the table, unnoticed by everyone else. Lisa and Spiri could barely speak to each other about anything normal, yet their eyes kept finding one another. The gaze they gave each other lingered, too long, too heavy. Lisa was turned on by Spiri, and the shame of it burned inside her. They would stare without either one dropping the look. In those moments, Lisa would fantasize about Spiri ripping off her panties right there at the table. Her cheeks would flush, her breath would quicken, and she'd suddenly need to leave. It was always in those moments that she'd lean over to Maffa and whisper, "Can we go home now?" At home, she'd be all over Maffa, kissing him urgently, pulling him close before he'd even set down his keys. Sometimes Maffa would be surprised by the suddenness of it. He was a romantic person who liked to take things slow, to light candles, to whisper sweet things. But Lisa couldn't wait. She needed him fast, hard, as if she was trying to drown out the image of his brother's eyes still burning in her mind. And Maffa, loving her as he did, gave her what she asked for, never knowing that her hunger wasn't entirely for him. The memory she tried to bury. 2 years ago, when Lisa was pregnant with her first child, the house felt too quiet. Her ankles were swollen, her back ached, and Maffa was working long hours at the co-op. So she asked her younger sister Nancy to come stay. Nancy was 23, beautiful in the same way Lisa was, same curves, same eyes, same laugh that started low and surprised you by going high. But where Lisa was contained, Nancy was not. She had no shame about her body. She moved through the world like it had never given her a reason to hide. Most days Nancy walked around the house in a short top and her underwear, singing while she swept the kitchen or wiped the windows. It was how she'd always been at home. She wasn't trying to provoke anyone. She was just comfortable. Those months became some of Lisa's favorite memories. The three of them spent long evenings together in the bedroom, talking, laughing, and sharing stories. Nancy always had something funny to say. Maffa, usually serious after long days at work, laughed more when she was around. Their company was easy together. Lisa had never been separated from her sister for long. They had grown up side by side, sharing everything from clothes to secrets, and when Lisa married Maffa, that closeness continued. Having Nancy in the house felt natural, almost like a piece of home had followed her into marriage. Maffa noticed Nancy's beauty. He wouldn't have been human if he didn't. Lisa saw it in small flashes, the way his eyes would flick up when Nancy bent to pick up the dustpan, the way he'd suddenly find something very interesting on the ceiling. They began a kind of polite flirting, the kind that lives in tone more than words. He'd tease her about burning the porridge. She'd tease him about being too serious. It was harmless. It was also not harmless. Lisa caught them once. She'd come back from the clinic, tired and nauseous. She pushed open the bedroom door without knocking. Maffa had just stepped out of the shower, a towel low on his hips. Nancy was already in the room, still in her top and underwear, holding an empty sugar jar. "Do you need more sugar?" Nancy had asked, oblivious. Lisa saw Maffa's reaction before he could hide it. Not his face, he was good at controlling his face. His body. The quick, involuntary response he couldn't stop, before he turned away, cleared his throat, and reached for a shirt. Nancy didn't notice. She set the jar down and left, humming. Maffa didn't say anything. Neither did Lisa. But the next morning, Lisa told Nancy she needed to go home. She said their mother needed help with the goats. It was a lie. Their mother had 3 nephews living with her. Nancy looked confused, then hurt, but she packed. She hugged Lisa at the gate. "Call me when the baby comes," she said. Lisa said she would. She didn't call for a week. She never told Nancy the real reason. She never told Maffa she knew. She folded the memory up and put it in a drawer she didn't open. The regret. Months later, after the baby was born, a boy with Maffa's serious eyes, guilt started eating at Lisa. She'd overreacted. More than that, Lisa missed her. She missed the conversations that stretched late into the evening. She missed the jokes that only the 3 of them understood. She missed hearing Nancy laugh from the kitchen while Maffa pretended to be annoyed by her singing. Looking back, Lisa realized how happy Maffa had seemed during those months. Not because he preferred Nancy over her, but because the 3 of them had created something warm together. Their company had been good. Easy. Familiar. Lisa started calling. She was warm. She asked about Nancy's job, about the man Nancy was dating, about the new church choir. She pretended the week of silence had never happened. Nancy forgave her immediately. That's how Nancy was. Soft, forgiving, without a mean bone in her body. "I missed you," Nancy said. "Next time I'll knock, I promise." She laughed when she said it, and Lisa laughed too, but her throat hurt. Maffa never mentioned it. Maybe he didn't remember. Maybe he remembered and chose not to. Lisa never asked. But she never forgot the way he'd looked. It proved something she hadn't wanted to know, that desire could land in a room without invitation, and good men were not immune. Why it matters now. Sitting at her mother-in-law's dinner table now, with Spiri's eyes on her and the weight of her own wanting pressing against her ribs, Lisa felt that same hot shame she'd felt 2 years ago. It rolled over her, familiar and sickening. Back then, she'd been terrified that Maffa wanted her sister. Terrified that a glance, a physical response, meant her marriage was fragile. She'd punished Nancy for it. Now, she was terrified that she wanted Maffa's brother. That same pull, that same hunger that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with wanting. The irony was bitter enough to taste. She'd cast Nancy out for inspiring a moment of desire. Now she was living inside that moment, day after day, and she wasn't casting herself out. She was leaning in. She thought about calling Nancy again. Not to apologize, she'd done that already, in her own way. But to hear her voice. Nancy's voice from before.